Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today was on a previous episode talking about his best-selling book, Never Lose a Customer Again. Now, that just so happens to be one of our most recommended books, both to our clients and also in previous podcasts as well. So I do highly recommend that you pick up that book. However, he's on today to talk about a different book. It's called Never Lose an Employee Again. And when I found out that he was writing this book, I knew it was a no-brainer that I had to bring him to you. If it's anything like his last book, you absolutely are going to want to grab this one. I remember hearing somebody tell me that employees were headaches. All they ever did was babysit. And it was the mindset that he had that constantly resulted in struggle and high turnover with his employees. Then you look at another gentleman like Richard Branson that prioritizes culture, that prioritizes his employees and so forth, because he believes that you create a great employee culture and ultimately they're going to create a great client experience. And so he has a different outlook and tends to love his employees and they love him right back. So without further ado, Joey, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Charles, it's an absolute thrill to be here. And thanks to everybody who's listening in and joining for the conversation. I got to tell you, we have the pleasure of knowing each other and being friends outside of podcast land. And it's just a delight to be back on the show.
So never lose an employee again. You're actually going over to Virgin Unite. And so, Richard Branson talks about, a lot of people say you got to put your customers first. And then a lot of businesses, and this is sort of traditional B school teaching, put your customers first and then your employees second. Would you suggest that maybe Richard Branson had it right and flip flop it? Or what's your opinion on the old saying, put your customers first over your employees?
Well, Charles, to be honest, I didn't know you were going to talk as much about Richard Branson and kind of the experience with them. But if I may share a story that, frankly, only my family knows, I had the opportunity of a lifetime. I actually went to Necker Island, Richard Branson's private
Wow.
island in the Caribbean, and I had the chance to present to an audience of absolutely incredible entrepreneurs from around the world. And who do I see walk into the back of the room? But Sir Richard himself. And I got to tell you, Charles, I've had the pleasure of speaking on all 7 continents. Now, it was a healthy blend of nerves and anticipation. And the anticipation was based on 2 things. Number one, he's one of the few leaders that I actually quote in the book. He talks about the importance of training your people and doubling down into educating and creating connection with your folks. But more importantly, like you, it sounds like, I had a belief that his business success was built on putting people first, really taking great care of his employees and knowing that the customer experience that would follow from delivering remarkable experience to employees would be worth its weight in gold. We had an unbelievable 2-hour Ask Me Anything session with him where he was on the microphone answering all kinds of questions. And someone in the audience said, if you were to point, Sir Richard, to one philosophy, one idea that you think is the reason for your success in business, is the reason why you've been able to accomplish so much with the Virgin brands, over 400 different companies operating all over the world in every vertical you might imagine. And he took a moment and paused and he said, you heard about it earlier today. It's the people.
Wow.
It's focusing on the experience that is delivered to our employees. If you get that right, the rest of the stuff kind of takes care of itself. And so I think it's a fun story and hopefully a fun segue into this idea that paying attention to your employees has not only wonderful benefits in terms of, to your point of the person you referenced, your own personal headaches and your own experience of work, but the ripple effect of the impact we can have on our customers, on the marketplace, on the homes and home lives of our employees is absolutely incredible when we double down on taking care of our people.
It's so true. And I'd have to wonder if the Virgin Airlines employees, as an example, or any member of the Virgin Group, if they actually do business with the company after they're working. And that's really a true testament. If it's more than just the discount, or if they actually respect the company so much that they'll play both sides.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that the anecdotal data seems to indicate that they do, at least based on the conversations I've had with Virgin team members around the world. It's not that hard to care about your people. Yes, it may require you doing things that are different than the industry norm. It may require you thinking long term as opposed to short term. But when we think about our employees as advocates, it changes the conversation. Now, often I'll be talking to leaders, whether it's in a consulting engagement or a workshop or an audience somewhere where I'm speaking, and I'll say, how many of you believe you have a ton of advocates within your employee base? And invariably, the hands race to the ceiling. Everybody wants to volunteer that they have amazing advocates. And I say, great, let's do a little experiment to test your hypothesis. And that experiment is this. The last time you had an open position in your organization, and you were interviewing new candidates, what percentage of those candidates were referrals from
Wow.
your existing and former employees? Now, what's fascinating, Charles, is the hands seem to race to the floor pretty quickly after I throw out this analysis or this idea. And I think at the end of the day, we know whether a company is successful or not by how its former employees speak about it. Because current employees are careful, right? They don't want to misspeak too much lest they
Right.
find themselves getting fired. That's why sites like Glassdoor have become so popular, because they give the anonymity of being able to comment on what you think is true as an employee in terms of the experience. But talking to alumni of the organization and asking them, what was your job like when you were there? Did you enjoy it? Would you ever consider going back? Do you feel you had a good experience? Is a really great way to baseline just how special or not special the interactions are.
One of the things that I hear all the time is that CEOs and founders will comment and they'll say, I just wish my team cared about my business as much as I do.
So true. In fact, to be honest, Charles, it's how I start the book. I start the book with that actual phrase. I wish my employees cared about the business as much as I do. I've said that phrase myself more times than I'm willing to admit. And it's the wrong way to think about it. Because while I empathize and understand that, your employees wish you cared as much about them as you care about the business.
Mm.
Now, if I may, let me unpack that a little bit, because the business leaders I know actually care deeply about their employees. They're worried about making payroll. They're worried, do we have the right people on the team and the right seats on the bus? Are we staffed enough? Are we moving into markets in the way we want? Am I providing enough income for my people to be able to succeed, to be able to achieve their dreams, support their families, etc.? But like the proverbial kindergarten exercise of show and tell, I think most employers are over indexing on the tell the employees that they matter as opposed to the show the employees that they matter. And it's a two-road street, right? We've got to make sure that the actions we take as leaders, that the systems and the processes we have place in our business are also showing our people that they matter.
You know, the interesting thing, other business leaders talk about, I show my employees that they matter. Every year I give them a Christmas bonus. That's how they know that they matter. What would your response be to the CEO who responds like that?
A Christmas bonus. Or I've even heard people say, well, I care about them. I pay them every 2 weeks, don't I? Those are the stakes to be in the game as an employer. If you struggle to interact with your employees, I'd like to make a suggestion. Number one, you actively consider retirement. Number two, you actively consider a different position, because your success or failure as a leader hinges almost entirely on the outcomes you're able to create for your people, for
Mhm.
the experiences you're able to deliver them, on the path that they are able to walk, supported and encouraged and motivated by you. I understand a lot of leaders will say, well, you know what, back when I was coming up, my boss didn't care about my career as much as I'm being asked to care about their career. Well, I'm sure that's true, but it doesn't make it right. Is the yesteryear when you were coming up that much better than today? Was it so great? Were you sitting there going, I love that my boss doesn't care about me and just makes me work, work, work because this is super fulfilling? No,
Right.
you were sitting with your friends after work talking about what an idiot your boss was, saying, someday when I run this company, when I run the show, I'm going to do things differently.
Yeah.
And then we forgot. We forgot what it was like to be an employee just starting out. We forgot what it was like to be someone lower on the organizational hierarchy ladder. We forgot what it was like to desperately be seeking autonomy, responsibility, the ability to create impact in something that was bigger than ourselves. I find myself fascinated with this question of why can we experience something when we enter the workplace? But the longer we're in the workplace, the harder it becomes to remember that.
Good point. One of the litmus tests that I use is in looking at actual behavior. If the employees show up a few minutes later than expected, if they're expected to work till 5, but they're packing their computer by quarter of 5, getting ready to walk out the door. If you're hearing constant rumblings of them can't wait till Friday, that for me is the first indication that there's an issue in the employee culture because they go home and they're often underappreciated and feel undervalued and so forth. But when they feel valued and appreciated at work, they love work so much, they want to stay at work. They want to remain engaged with their other team members. And then they tend to voluntarily work longer hours than is expected of them. You may see somebody show up here and there on weekends. You'll see people volunteering to take on extra responsibility that is not part of their job because they love what they do so much. They just want to continue to give back.
Absolutely. The humans are in some ways simple creatures. We're very complex in many ways, but in some ways we're very simple. And one of the ways that I feel we're simple is that every human I've ever met wants to feel loved. They want to feel significant, feel that they're having an impact, earn an honest wage for an honest day's work, better off next year than they are this year, provide for their family, their loved ones, their friends. They want to have a sense of purpose, but they also want to have a sense of fun. The only challenge I have with the scenario you present is I think that the truly enlightened leader, the leader of the future, is one who is creating that type of environment, creating those type of opportunities for employees, but is also paying attention that that employee doesn't become addicted to their work to the
Yes.
exclusion of the rest of their life. I believe 10 years from now, the top businesses in the world will have a perspective whereby they care as much about what happens between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. in their employees' lives as they care about what happens between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. What I'm suggesting is that we appreciate that the humans who work for us have lives outside of their work. And part of our job as leaders is to not only be aware of that, but to be responsive to that. Quick story,
Mhm.
if I may. When we're recording this podcast, it is one of the busiest times of the year for me. I'm on the road giving speeches, I'm recording podcasts, I've got a book coming out next week. There's a lot going on. And my director of details had a situation about 24 hours ago where she lost all power in her home. It was part of a major storm where she lives. In fact, over 170,000 people lost power. And here we are 24 hours later, and they still don't have power. Now, I'm in conversation with her. Right after she loses power, she texts me and says, Hey, I'm trying to find another place to go work. I said, Why? It's okay. Nothing we are doing, nothing I am doing in my career, with my business, with my life, with the launch of this book, with the speeches I have to give is as important as you looking out for your family right now. I'm sorry, it's just not. And I don't say that to seem special and get accolades and appreciation. I say that to hopefully illustrate that there are opportunities all day, every day for
Mhm.
leaders to listen to what's going on in their employees' lives and respond accordingly.
Yeah.
I find so many employers look over their people with this kind of authoritarian, draconian view of, well, where are you? To be candid, this is the whole BS behind the drive in many organizations to get back to corporate headquarters. Some of it is based in good intention. We want people to collaborate. We want them to feel a sense of community. But a boatload of it is based in identity. Folks, we can do better. If they were good enough for you to invite into your business, if they're good enough for you to trust with your reputation, with your customers, with your bank accounts, with the operation of your business, why don't you trust them enough to manage their own calendars? Why don't you trust them enough to know the difference between making a good choice and a bad choice? If you don't think they will, that probably speaks to the lack of training and onboarding that you've done as part of your business and the lack of culture you support in terms of your expectations for your people and what they can expect of you.
Well, you actually bring up a good point. That's one of the things that I was going to talk to you about is how do you create sort of this high performing best self remote culture?
Well, again, I try to lead from a place of empathy. We are in uncharted territory. 30 years ago, it is highly likely, better than 90% of the chances, that your employer was based within 30 miles of your home. You
Mhm.
commuted to work, you worked at headquarters, you commuted home. That was the majority of employees on the planet. Today, it is highly likely, in fact, the majority of scenarios are that your employer is not based within 30 miles of your home. You're working remotely, you're not commuting. Couple thoughts on the laments of the leader in the remote era. When we're frustrated that that employee is going and maybe getting a second job, or they might be moonlighting doing something else, my first response is get curious. Why are they doing this? What is going on in their life that they need more money? Is it that they need more money, in which case we might have an opportunity to look at our own compensation plans? Is it that they're seeking more autonomy and they feel that over in their 9 to 5 job, they don't have it? So if they can get another job with some flexibility and some opportunity, they're excited. I was just at an event where folks were talking about the number of employees they have that are starting to work in the gig economy. Now, let's just stop and think about how many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. How many Americans want to have dollars as quickly as they can? And then let's look at the archaic model that we've had going on in our society for decades of we're going to do a little currency arbitrage with your salary. You're going to work for 2 weeks, and then we'll pay you for the 2 weeks you just worked. We're going to carry the float of the money you're making across those 2 weeks and then provide it to you 2 weeks later. Now, again, I'm not saying that business leaders were nefarious. What I am saying is we have a situation in our economy that is not only post-COVID, this has been going on for years, where the average person doesn't have any semblance of fiscal awareness or understanding. And so we can either choose to say, well, this is frustrating that they're picking up gig economy work, or like many of the top employers right now, they're looking to what would it be like to pay our people every day they work?
Mhm.
What would it be like to put those systems in place? In most organizations, it's a software automation. It's just the stasis of having done it the same way for so long. That's the only thing from keeping us thinking differently. The last thing I'll say as it relates to remote work is one of the laments I hear regularly is people saying, well, my people just aren't as productive at home as they were in the office. Really? What are you measuring? What data is supporting that statement? Because all the research I've seen seems to indicate that at home workers are more engaged, are more productive, and are more efficient. Now, they may be able to do an 8-hour workday in 5.5 hours. But if you actually look at the research, that's what they were doing at the office too. They were spending those 2.5 other hours surfing the net, talking to their coworkers, being interrupted by Bob over in accounting, who seems to wander the halls aimlessly, stopping by everybody's desk. Hey, how's it going? What you been up to lately? How's your weekend? What do you think of the weather? You know, that type of thing. When we think as leaders about remote culture, we need to find ways to bring people together. But that doesn't mean they need to be in the office 5 days a week. What
Mhm.
would it be like to have everybody come to the office once a week? Or maybe even once a month? How much more focused would we be
Yeah.
if we knew we were coming together and we only had 1 day per month of FaceTime in front of our employees? Would we spend that day in meetings? Would we spend that day standing in front of the room reading off our agenda that we created, that we sent to everyone to basically tell them the things that were already written down on the agenda? Or would we use it as an opportunity for collaboration, for input, for creativity? The choice is ours.
One of the things that we do internally is we ask our team, what are your goals? And if they're comfortable, what are your goals personally, not just professionally? And so my chief of staff, one of the things that he said to me when he was hired was, I want to go to Serbia with my wife. My wife is Serbian. I'd love to be able to go. And he did go to Serbia, which is fantastic. But when employees can connect their goals, not just professional goals, but their personal goals to the work that they're doing, when their boss knows that it's important, it's just as equally as important to the boss as it is important to the employee that their goals are met. There tends to be more of that team effort. Like, my boss is on my side and we're going to work together and make things happen. And
Charles, you are spot on. I couldn't agree more with you. There's a case study in the book from a company called Zappos. Zappos works in the healthcare kind of industrial supply space. So think of it as they create cleaning products that are environmentally friendly to help gyms and spas,
yeah,
operate more cleanly. They've got a couple different things. Number one, speaking directly to this, they have something called Health Cash. Health Cash says, what are your personal health goals? We'll help pay for it. So if you want to run a marathon, they'll cover your entrance fees. They cover your gym membership. When you work out, you get paid. Their interests are aligned because they know if you're healthy as an employee, it's going to make you a better worker. It's going to make you more
absolutely.
available. It's in everyone's best interest. But the one they have that I thought was really interesting is Launch Cash. Here's how Launch Cash works. If you're a Zappos employee and you think to yourself, you know what? I'd like to start my own business. I'm going to quit working here to go start my own business. You get money to help fund your new business.
Hmm.
Launch Cash, money
Wow.
to help you launch. And in having a conversation with the CEO, Paul LeBlanc, I said, Paul, let me get this right. You're basically paying people to go start other businesses. He said, Joey, why wouldn't I? These are people that have given of their time, of their talent to help me grow my business. Why wouldn't I help them grow theirs? If they're
Wow.
really committed to entrepreneurship and I'm an entrepreneur, don't we want and need more entrepreneurs in the world? And what's beautiful, Charles, to your point about talking to your employees and learning about their goals, when an employee comes to him and says, I'm thinking about starting my own business, he said, that's fantastic. Let's have a meeting and talk about it. And invariably during the meeting, the employee realizes they're not as ready to start the business as they might have thought they were.
Right.
But then Paul puts them on an internal training program designed to show them all the operations of Zappos and help them understand all the moving parts of running your own business. Now, this has two wonderful effects. Number one, when they do decide to leave and start their business, they are much more likely to succeed and they have a much stronger positive feeling about their employer and more specifically, the CEO of their company. But more importantly, as they learn more about Zappos, as they get clearer about how the organization actually operates, they spot opportunities to improve Zappos. They
Hmm.
look at it from an entrepreneur's, from a business owner's mind. They care about the business as much as the employer wants them to do because they are learning about the business. So it's
Hmm.
just a matter of getting creative in how we interact with our people.
I'll tell you, one of the best stories that I could share about the importance of making somebody feel appreciated and valued and whatnot came many years ago when I was invited to do a factory tour of this operation out in Massachusetts. And so the CEO at the time is a guy named Bill Cavallaro. And so as I'm going through the manufacturing plant, we go in the back area and there's this guy sweeping the floor and he stops and he goes, Charlie, I want you to meet John. John, come over here and meet Charlie. And so I'm thinking to myself, this is interesting. The CEO of the company is having me meet the custodian in the factory. And so he goes over and he shakes my hands and he says, Charlie, I want you to take a look around right now. Look at the floor. Do you see how perfect the floor is? Do you see how there's nothing, there's no dirt on the floor? Everything is pristine. The one of the major reasons why we're able to be so good, number one in the industry, is because John here keeps this whole place crystal clear. John had the biggest smile on his face and he grabbed that broom. I've never seen anybody so proud before to sweep the floor. And that for me was such a magical moment because you could see a transformation happen in the employee just by feeling appreciated. For a custodian who's sweeping the floor to feel like I am playing a part in a major multi-million dollar operation. So
Charles, I love it. I love it. When our people feel part of something bigger than themselves, when they see that the role, the contribution that they make has an end result that is much greater than maybe the reason they were hired, the reason they've got a paycheck, the responsibilities on their daily to-do list, it changes the culture. There
mhm,
is no one in your organization that isn't somehow contributing to the success of your organization. The
right.
question is, have we told them that? And have we shown them that we appreciate that?
I love it. So I'm going to finish up with one question because I know you've got a lift showing up. So this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your biggest, best tip for the CEOs and founders listening who want to take their companies beyond seven figures?
You know, I have the opportunity, the great fortune to be friends with Jesse and Emily Cole, the owners of
Oh,
the Savannah Bananas baseball team. And I actually, as part of the work and the research I was doing for the book, they're a case study in the book. I went and worked as an employee of the Bananas for one night at a banana ball game.
wow.
Charles, it was epic. It was so fun. It was so crazy. And at the end of the night, I found myself up in the top of the stands watching the final inning. I went up to the top of the stands and I'm looking and I'm watching how this idea, this vision of doing sports differently, putting fans first, has manifested itself in 6,000 raving fans screaming wildly in a game that really it's tough to describe it as baseball. And in that moment, I realized that not only did it take a great vision from the founders, Jesse and Emily Cole, and a commitment to putting fans first and a commitment to putting their employees first and really thinking strategically about their team. But what it also took was being willing to release some of the control.
Mm,
I think the difference between six figures and seven figures and eight figures is accelerated when you're willing to release control, when you're
mm,
willing to say, I've got a vision, but I want you to contribute to this vision. I want you to help with this vision. I want you to color in and flesh out the vision a little bit with me. When we are willing to do that, I think our success becomes magnitudes greater.
I love that. Now, people want to learn more about you and get a copy of the book and all that other fun stuff. Where do we send them?
So the book is called Never Lose an Employee Again. It's available in whatever format you like to consume books. So if you're a hard copy kind of person, you want to take notes in the margin, you're good to go. If you'd rather read it on your Kindle or your Nook, we got you taken care of with the ebook. And if you've enjoyed the sound of my voice during our conversation today, I actually narrate the audiobook to you. So you can even jack me up to 3x speed and I'll read the book as quickly as you want. It will be an experience, I promise. So the book's available wherever you like to get your books. Indie bookstores, big plug for them. They're so important in our community. Go ahead and explore going to an indie bookstore and ordering the book. That'd mean a lot to me. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, wherever you like to get books, you'll be well taken care of. If you want to learn more about these topics, come to my website. It's joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a 5-year-old, or a baby kangaroo. Coleman, Coleman, like the camping equipment, but no relation. You'll be able to learn all about how to create remarkable employee experiences, as well as my first book, Never Lose a Customer Again, and how to create those remarkable customer experiences as well. They really are two sides of the same coin. The more you focus on one, the more the other one necessarily will get better as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm excited for that book to launch. That's Never Lose a Customer Again. Joey, thank you very much for being a guest here at the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. And as a reminder for all our guests looking for more strategies, tips, and information, take the company beyond seven figures. Also, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my friend Joey Coleman. Joey, have a safe flight. and I will see you in another episode.